Macbeth, Act 4. If you remember in Act 3, Macbeth decided that he was going to go seek out the advice of the three sisters again. So in Act 4, Scene 1, he goes back to the forest. And when they first see him, the second witch says, "By the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes." This is a really famous line from the play. And it also shows us that the witches, they realize and recognize Macbeth's true nature. So when Macbeth asks them for some advice, or for a prophecy, they show him three apparitions or visions. Now, the first one tells Macbeth to beware Macduff. The second one tells him that none of woman born shall harm him. So at first, when he found out beware Macduff, that made him nervous. But then the second apparition told him none of woman born could harm him. And everyone is born from a woman. So he says, "Then live, Macduff, what need I fear of thee? Yet I'll make assurance double sure, and take a bond of fate. Thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale-hearted fear it lies, and sleep in spite of thunder." So he really thinks that he doesn't need to fear Macduff because Macduff was born of woman. But he's going to make double sure by getting rid of him anyway. I mean, at this point, he's killed so many people that murder, unlike the very first murder, if you think about when he murdered Duncan, and he was so upset by it, and it really shook him, now it's really like second nature. So he's going to kill Macduff anyway. And the third apparition then tells Macbeth that he will remain in power until Birnam Wood comes to Dunsinane Hill. So until the woods actually moves and comes up the hill. And Macbeth believes this will never be. He says the trees can't unfix their roots from the ground. The trees can't get up and walk. So he feels really secure. And remember in Act 3, Scene 5, the witches said that security is mortal's chiefest enemy. So after hearing this, now Macbeth feels pretty confident and pretty secure. Finally, Macbeth asks the sisters, will Banquo's sons ever be kings? And they show him a vision, a line of 8 kings with Banquo at the end of it. And according to Macbeth, this sears his eyeballs. He does not want to see this. He wants his offspring to be kings, not Banquo's. And he tries to get the sisters to stay, but they disappear. Then when he's speaking to Lennox, he says about the 3 sisters, infected be the air whereon they ride, and damned all those that trust him. Which is very ironic, because Macbeth trusts the 3 sisters so much so that he defiled himself and killed his king because of what they said. Yet he's damning those that trust him. So it's kind of ironic. And in a sense, he's damning himself because he trusts them more than anyone. Lennox then tells Macbeth about Macduff's flight to England, and upon learning this, he gets very upset. He knows that Macduff doesn't trust him now, and that Macduff has gone to England where he knows Malcolm is. And he plans to go to Fife, and as repayment for Macduff's disloyalty, Macbeth's going to have Macduff's family, his wife and children, killed. So if we doubted Macbeth's cruelty at this point, now he's going to be killing innocent women and children. This happens in Act 4, Scene 2. First, we see Lady Macduff talking to Ross, and she is worried for her safety. She knows that Macduff's flight makes him a traitor, and she's worried about any repercussions that could happen to her and her family. But Ross tries to reassure her. He says that Macduff is noble, Macduff is wise, and suddenly a messenger appears, and the messenger says that danger is approaching. And in the blink of an eye, the murderers storm the castle, they kill Lady Macduff, and they kill all of Macduff's children. Meanwhile, in England, Macduff is reporting on the state of Scotland, and he says that new widows howl and new orphans cry. There are new sorrows. Basically, the state is in disarray. Malcolm responds with, "This tyrant whose sole name blisters our tongue was once thought honest." He's talking about Macbeth, this tyrant. They once thought he is honest, but now even saying his name blisters their tongues. Malcolm is suspicious when Macduff tries to get him to go back to Scotland. Macduff comes and says, come back to Scotland, let's get rid of Macbeth. But Malcolm is suspicious. Remember, there are daggers in men's smiles. So he's worried that maybe he's being lured back there to be killed. And so he tests Macduff's sincerity. He says, okay, if I go back and get the throne, I'm going to have all the women. I'm going to cut the nobles off from their lands. I will be much more cruel than Macbeth. You can be sure of that. And Macduff's response is that, well, you're not fit to rule either then. And Malcolm basically says, oh, I was just kidding. I was just testing you. I was testing your sincerity to see whether you really wanted a just and fair king or whether you just wanted to harm me or to help to use me to get rid of Macbeth. Macduff then learns about the deaths of his wife and his children. And this is terrible news, obviously. He is very distraught. Malcolm tells him to be comforted. Let's make medicine of our great revenge to cure this deadly grief. So this great revenge is going to be to oust Macbeth from power. And he says this will be the medicine. This will cure this grief you have. This is the only thing you can do to alleviate some of the sorrow of this murder of your family, is to find the man responsible and remove him from power. And so at the end of Act 4, the scene is set for Act 5, where the great battle will be fought. Macbeth trying to defend his throne, and many of the nobles trying to remove him from power.